to The Loud Box, an American audio podcast with your host, Elle Robinson, and I'm asking you to join me weekly as we listen, relate, and discuss the things that are unspoken, overlooked, and hidden in the back of our minds, or what I like to call the corner of denial. So engage with us. Share your story. I'll even go first regarding family, relationships, the world we live in, our mental health, and how it really and truly affects us. How you were molded by your experiences, even how you overcame them. There's really only one way to get it out, and that's to unlock the box. Hello, and welcome back to our audio podcast. I am your host, Elle. I hope everyone is doing well. The topic today is going to be a little heavy. I realize that especially in this current climate, unfortunately, this episode was already planned, and to be honest, it should have been released way before now. This is not an episode I wanted to make, but it is one I have to make. We are living in a moment where immigration is no longer a policy discussion. It's a pressure point. Emotions are high, lines are blurred, and too often truth gets sacrificed in favor of comfort. So let me be clear from the start. This conversation is not about immigrants as a whole. It is not about xenophobia. It is not about demonizing love across borders, and it is not about fear-mongering. This is about one specific, very real issue under U.S. law: immigration marriage fraud. What it is, why it exists, and who it ultimately harms. Because we refuse to talk honestly about the abuse within the system, we don't protect immigrants. We put them at risk. We don't preserve civil liberties, we weaken them. And we don't strengthen marriages, we cheapen them. In a climate where enforcement scrutiny feels heavier, where lawful immigrants fear being misclassified, and where citizens can be pulled into legal nightmares they never anticipated, silence is not neutral. It is dangerous, and people are dying. So today I am choosing truth over comfort. Not to inflame, but to inform. Not to accuse, but to clarify. And not to tear down, but to finally put this conversation where it belongs, in the light. U.S. immigration marriage fraud, what the law actually says, how it really works, and why pretending it doesn't exist helps no one. We're talking about when the law isn't enough when it comes to illegal marriage fraud in the United States. Full disclaimer, nothing in this episode constitutes legal advice. This discussion is informational and based on publicly available immigration law and documented cases. Also, to be clear, I didn't wake up one day and decide to talk about this. This isn't a new conversation for me. I've written extensively about relationship dynamics, power imbalances, and the ways people, especially women, are pressured into emotional and legal risk without fully understanding the consequences. Some of that work lives in my books because certain things simply demands a bit more than a soundbite, and today's episode is the verbal extension of that work. Let's get into it. This episode is about what happens when the law exists, but enforcement doesn't. When illegal marriage fraud falls into the gap between federal priorities and local ignorance, Americans are left exposed. I didn't write to punish someone. I wrote because knowledge is the only protection this system reliably offers. This is not a story about anger, and it's not a story about revenge. It's a story about what happens when the law exists, but it's not enough. When people hear the phrase illegal marriage fraud, they often imagine a clear villain, a clear victim, and a clear resolution. They assume that if fraud exists, the system will detect it, investigate it, and somehow correct it. That assumption is absolutely 1000% wrong. Under U.S. immigration law, marriage fraud is narrowly defined. It hinges on intent at the time of marriage, specifically whether the marriage was entered into for the purpose of evading immigration law rather than for a genuine marital relationship. That distinction matters because a marriage that fails is not automatically fraudulent, and a marriage that looks questionable is not necessarily illegal. The law is written this way intentionally. It presumes good faith. And in many cases, that presumption is necessary. But that same presumption creates a gap wide enough for exploitation and quiet enough that most people don't realize it exists until they are already inside it. What we are really talking about today is not whether marriage fraud exists. It does. This much is clear. The law acknowledges it. What we are talking about is why the law so often fails to deliver accountability, even when evidence exists, even when harm is real, and even when a U.S. citizen bears the cost. Immigration law is federal law. That seems obvious, but its consequences are not. Local governments, local courts, and local law enforcement agencies are not trained in immigration fraud statutes. They are not equipped to investigate them. And most importantly, they do not even know where their authority begins or ends. This creates a vacuum. A citizen who suspects marriage fraud often turns first to their local institutions, family court, police departments, attorneys, only to discover that no one can explain the process clearly. Not because they are unwilling, but because immigration fraud exists outside their operational knowledge. The assumption is always that someone else handles it. USCIS, ICE, the federal government, and yet without a triggering mechanism, without priority, resources, or political incentive, nothing moves. So the first barrier is not evidence, it is institutional unfamiliarity. At the federal level, immigration enforcement is not driven by morality. It is driven by resources, scale, and financial impact. Marriage fraud cases are difficult to prosecute. They require proven intent at the beginning of the relationship, often years after the fact. They involve personal communications, emotional narratives, and subjective interpretations of intimacy. They are labor-intensive and very expensive. As a result, marriage fraud is frequently deprioritized in favor of cases that involve human trafficking, smuggling operations, large-scale document fraud, organized visa mills, financial crimes with high dollar returns. This is not conjecture. It is how enforcement triage work. And the results is that individual cases, especially those involving one U.S. citizen and one foreign national, rarely rise to the level of action, no matter how devastating the personal consequences may be. The system is not designed to pursue emotional harm. It is designed to pursue measurable impact. Here is where system quietly shifts responsibility. The burden does not rest on the alleged fraudster to prove legitimacy. It rests on the citizen to prove deception. This means financial loss, legal fees, time, documentation, emotional exhaustion. And even then, proof does not guarantee action, because evidence does not equal enforcement. This is the part no one prepares citizens for, and it drives me completely insane. You can document inconsistencies, you can produce communications, you can demonstrate patterns, and still, the U.S. system may decline to act. Not because the evidence is weak, but because the threshold for intervention is higher than most people realize, and the appetite for pursuing it is lower than most people expect. When marriage fraud is rarely enforced, the consequences ripple outward. For citizens, trust in legal marriage protection erodes. Reporting feels futile. Silence becomes self-preservation. For legitimate immigrants, fraud undermines credibility. Scrutiny increases, genuine relationships are questioned. For the system itself, loopholes remain unaddressed. Patterns repeat. Accountability becomes inconsistent. And perhaps most damaging of all, the silence teaches the wrong lesson. It teaches that emotional labor is free, that legal risk can be transferred, and that the cost of deception is often borne by the person least equipped to absorb it. Why I wrote the books. I did not write to punish anyone. I wrote because knowledge is the only reliable protection this system offers. When enforcement is inconsistent, awareness becomes essential. The books exist to document patterns, not people, to explain dynamics, not assign blame, and to ensure that others do not walk into legal and emotional contracts without understanding the stakes. This episode is not about discouraging love. It is about encouraging discernment. Because when the law is not enough, information matters. In silence, it helps no one. There is no public data showing a direct increase in marriage fraud tied to deportation activity as of today. But what we do know across every system that involves fear, instability, and power imbalance is that desperation changes behavior. In my own case, there was no sense of urgency on my part, but there was on his. Charm, emotional intensity, and accelerated attachment mask red flags that in a different context I might have questioned. When one person's stability depends on the relationship and the other person is unaware of that imbalance, consent becomes asymmetrical. Desperation doesn't always look desperate. Sometimes it looks like romance. Sometimes it looks like devotion. Sometimes it looks like love. Some of what I've shared today can't be fully explored in a single episode. That's why I chose to document these patterns, writing slowly, carefully, and in detail. The books aren't about one person or one outcome. They're about how people get pulled into legal binding situations without full information, and how the system often leaves them to absorb the consequences alone. There aren't any organizations for us or for people trying to avoid marriage fraud. If this episode resonates and you want deeper context, real scenarios, warning signs, and the questions no one tells you to ask, that work is available, not as solution, but as preparation. I've done the work for you, so you don't have to. I want to thank you for joining us today. Until next time.